And welcome to another episode of DIOTALK. I'm Dio. Let's talk. Today I have an incredible guest. She's an author, she's a podcaster, and she's a paranormal detective. Give a warm welcome to Eleanor Wagner. Welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me. I'm intrigued to talk to you because you have so many things going on, right? From the podcast to writing books, and I don't know where to start. So I'm gonna start by asking you, what inspired you to become this paranormal detective researcher, just intrigued with paranormal activity?
I've been a writer since I was a kid and learned to read just like everybody did when they were in kindergarten and was hooked. And all the books that I went for were ghost stories.
Wow.
But there's no story that's better than a real ghost story. And I was haunted as a child. I had a ghost living in the shop that I owned in Sussex County, where I now live.
Wow.
And whenever I go to visit Cape May, which is my favorite place in New Jersey, I always buy the latest book on the hauntings in the area. So when I was writing my second book, which is a psychological thriller, I took a turn and decided to write about true account hauntings because I've had my own personal experiences and I know my town is haunted. Every town is haunted, right?
Yeah.
So I put it out on social media and said, hey, people, does anybody want to share their story with me? It might end up in my book. And that's how I started to get the stories that I've put into the books that I've written. And with it just came this whole new career because my children are full grown and now I'm writing pretty much all the time. I mean, I work in kindergarten during the day, but when I come home, I'm writing my stories. And people started reaching out to me and saying, do you have a paranormal team? Can you bring them to my house? Can you bring them to my business? I have this going on. We have this video to show you, and so on and so on. And before I knew it, we were scheduling paranormal investigations pretty much every weekend since 2019.
Wow. That's, first of all, congrats, because that's a major
Thanks.
accomplishment, from writing to read to just wow, right? Like, what were the I want to say the ghosts or the spirits that were living in your house growing up? Were they nice? Were they aggressive? Like, were they traumatizing? Did it affect you in a certain way?
It was just one ghost, and it was a male ghost. And at the time, I was 7 years old and terrified beyond measure, because here I am, this 7-year-old kid, had no clue what was going on. My parents were not really into the paranormal. They were these immigrants who were hardworking people and just never really talked about that kind of thing. So when I would tell mom that I was being frightened by what I was seeing, she would say, oh, it was just a dream. And I don't hold it against her because she really didn't know anything about it.
Correct.
It wasn't as if she understood that I was seeing spirits and that she was going to nurture it. Like I see a lot of people that I interview nowadays, the situations are very different with the people that nurture their children compared to those that don't. And I was one of those that mom just said, oh, it was a nightmare. And, I was also experiencing premonitions when I was a kid too. I would have premonitions about things that would happen in dreams, and then they would happen. And mom would say, oh, it's just a dream. And then what happened? I'll say, mom, I told you, I dreamt about that. And one time I had a dream about something really awful. And it was actually a nightmare, obviously. And mom said, oh, it was just a dream. Don't worry about it. And then it ended up happening. And that freaked me out. So I kind of like shut down. I moved myself into the basement when my sister got married. So I never saw that male spirit again. And because he only stayed on the main floor, and I shut myself down as far as anything was concerned. So I didn't want to have anything to do with it. It wasn't until I started to get older that I realized, okay, that spirit was just trying to get my attention and I didn't know it. And if I could go back to that home now and say, spirit, I'm sorry, I'm sorry I wasn't listening, but I can't, because that I don't live in that home anymore.
Correct. Yes.
That's really what they want. They just want acknowledgement. They're trying to get your attention because they have something to say. So I started to learn that as I got older. But as far as my gift was concerned, the day my dad died, when he came to me and let me know that he was gone, that was kind of a reawakening moment for me. That was kind of like an aha moment. Oh my gosh. His dad not only trying to tell me he's gone and that he's okay, but is he trying to explain to me that I've got something going on, because not everybody can see their deceased dad,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
like there's something going on here. So that was when I realized I really need to educate myself about the paranormal, and as much as I love ghost stories, I really need to find out what it is that's special about me and maybe use it for the betterment of others. And so it was then when I was 30 that I really started to educate myself about these special things that people can accomplish. I'm not nearly as gifted as anyone on my paranormal team, but I do have special gifts. And I'm sure my shutting it down all those years ago had a little bit to do with why it's not as advanced as other people's is. But everybody's place happens in its own time. And I
Correct.
feel
Very
like,
true.
okay, it may have been meant to happen this late in life, but it's happening and I'm doing what I can with it. And so when I started to write that true account haunting book, that's when I realized, all right, that I'm doing what I really need to do. I'm helping spirit to get acknowledged. I'm telling their story. When we do investigations, I'm helping those residents to understand what's going on in their home, because we do try to get the spirit to go into the light, but that doesn't always work. They don't always want to leave. And so if they don't want to leave, we have to really try and help those people that are living in the home and the spirit to live peacefully. And it usually works in getting that homeowner to at least acknowledge the spirits there and make them feel like they're a part of the home that originally belonged to them in the first
Yeah.
place, right?
You know what's ironic? I had a guest named Daniel Jackson. He's a spiritual medium,
Yes,
and
I know Daniel.
yes, he's a credible
Yes,
guy. And he
yeah,
was saying the same thing, that they're just trying to
mm-mm,
find the light, and some of them tend to be lost, or they
right.
just haven't accepted that it's time for them to go.
Yes.
Oh, it gives me
And
chills.
some of them don't want to go. I mean, we did my paranormal team and I, we did an investigation in the Sterling Hill mines in Ogdensburg, New Jersey. And you got to know there were hundreds of lives that were lost in mining accidents over the years.
Wow.
But it's a brotherhood. They're all there together. A lot of it's residual. They're working day in and day out like they did in life, but there's still that brotherhood there. And when we were doing our investigation, you had supervisors and miners that were working, trying to explain to us what it is that happened to them at their time of death, which was amazing. In fact, we got such good footage from that particular investigation that it was featured on Paranormal Caught on Camera for an episode from some of the evidence that we had gotten from that investigation. But where I was going with this is they we wanted to try and get them into the light. Now, in certain situations, you can usually move some of them on. Like you can, if there's a
Mm-hmm.
group of, say, a train wreck, let's say, you can get a lot of them to move on, and some just want to stay behind for whatever reason. In this particular instance, though many of them would have gone into the light, they stayed behind because others didn't, and they didn't want to leave their brothers behind. So
Wow. That's
spirits have
beautiful.
their certain reasons for doing certain things, and you got to understand that's the decision that they've made and try and deal with it. Now, I never got a really bad feeling at all in the mines. It was a great camaraderie. It was just a love of each other. It was a great feeling, but they all wanted to just stay there doing their thing. Whereas in other situations, when you can get a spirit to move into the light, then it's really a good thing. Sometimes they're hesitant to go in. We did an investigation one time in a small little shop in Lafayette, New Jersey, and we discovered there was a spirit of an older man and a young child. And the reason why they were kind of like bound together at this point in death is because they both had something in common. They were both ostracized by society. The child had been ostracized because he had epilepsy, and he grew up in like the 1800s, the Victorian era. If a child was born with something like that, they were stigmatized.
Yeah.
And most of the time, families would hide them, like up in the attic, and not even bring them out into society. And this young child ended up dying. I don't know if he died from the epilepsy or if he succumbed to some disease or ailment that happened in that time frame. Whatever it was, he died young and found this older man spirit who also lived in that building at one point in time. And now this older man was kind of taking care of this young boy. He took his own life by suicide because he was a gay Catholic and he was ostracized by society. So he was afraid to go into the light because he was afraid he was going to be unaccepted.
Because of
And that
suicide.
it was, yeah. So, and because he was a gay Catholic, that religious, you know how
Hmm.
religion has that, it, it,
No,
it,
especially
it,
back in that
it's got
era.
that,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it really, people have this religious guilt. And we were so saddened as a group just to have this happen. So we said prayers for him, and we explained to him that, there is no judgment in the light. You may have been judged here on earth, but that's humanity doing that to you. You don't have to worry about being judged in the light. You need to have no fear going into the light. And when we left there, we weren't sure if we had convinced him to take the young boy with him into the light, but we'd gone back to that particular building several times over a course of time. So we did go back again a month or so later. And we're always getting new spirits because they do travel in towns that are very active. And he did. They moved on into light. So I was glad that we actually had succeeded in helping him and the young boy to understand that they would be accepted and not treated the way they were on Earth. But you
Wow.
do have situations like that, and people do have attachments. They're worried about their families, and they don't realize their families are dead and have moved on and waiting there for them. They're still looking for them here. Or if somebody dies tragically, that's terrible too, because a lot of times if they die tragically, they don't even know that they're gone. And it takes a paranormal investigator to say, hey, this is 2021 and you are deceased. I'm sorry to have to give that news to you. We had an incident one time too where we were investigating an antique shop, and you get a lot of stuff in an antique shop because they're bringing in
Hmm.
furniture that's got attachments, and it's really fun because you do get a lot of activity that way. But in this one particular instance, we were talking to all the spirits that were there, and the mediums at the time noticed that there was a young new spirit there that was kind of uh, observing what we were doing in the background. And they knew that he was from present day because he was wearing a baseball cap and he had some sort of a jersey on. And I was the only one that was at that particular investigation that lived in the general area. The mediums that were with me that day kind of lived in other outside counties
Hmm.
and came from a distance. And I knew that not too long before our investigation, there was a young kid that was killed in a tragic farming accident.
Wow.
And I mean, I knew his name and nobody else did. And when she was asking him questions and describing him to me, the way she described him, because I knew what he looked like, I'd seen his pictures in the newspaper, and he looked exactly like he was in the newspaper. And that's when it kind of clicked in my head. You get these pieces of the puzzle that get put together. It's almost like they were implanted there. And so I just say what comes to me. Even if it doesn't pan out in the end, I'm going to say it because you never know important that little bit of what you say is to whatever investigation that you've got going on. So when she was talking all these things out, and the thought came into my mind about the young man who passed away, I asked, are you so and so? And she immediately responded. He said yes. And I said, oh my goodness. And we were all women there that night. And I explained to them, I said, I think this young man is the young man who passed away tragically a couple of weeks ago. And he responded to the name that I know him to be. I think it's him. I think he doesn't know he's dead. So we had the responsibility at that point to explain to him that he was deceased. And he was like really concerned about his mom and his girlfriend. And we had to explain to him that they're okay, they're fine, and they will be fine. And it's okay for you to go into that light. But I got to tell you, there was not a dry eye in the room that night because we were all women, all mothers with young children, and we were hysterical having to tell this teenage boy that he was gone and he had to go into the light. So it was sad and poignant all at the same time that we were able to help him, but just to have to deal with that was just very emotionally draining. But you do get into situations like that where you have spirits that just don't know what's happened to them. And some of them have been there for a really long time. Like we were lucky that we were able to help him because it just had happened. Imagine if he'd
Mhm.
been in that state of affair for years and years and years and not even known. Can't even imagine. You have children that die tragically in accidents. We did an investigation at the Rockport train wreck where a lot of children died with immigrants that were going back to their country, and they died in this train crash. And we had a child that was still looking for her mother. And in that instance, we felt like the mom had already moved on and she was still looking for mom. So when you get into situations like that, you try and help them to move into the light and explain to them, because that happened in 1925, that particular train wreck.
Wow.
So you try
Wow.
to explain to the child that if you go into the light, mom's there, she's waiting for you, but that's where you got to go. So it's really hard when you have situations like that if they don't listen, if they don't understand. Children spirits are afraid too. They're hesitant and afraid. So it's hard sometimes.
I can begin to imagine. What are some things you can debunk from doing what you do? Because you see these TV shows and we're ghost hunters, and it sounds what you're doing. It sounds totally different than what these shows provide or trying to do.
I can tell you, I've had personal experience with a New York director when he was trying to we had filmed, my group, the Lady Ghostbusters, had filmed a sizzle reel to try and get a television program. And one of the things he did explain to us is that it's entertainment,
Mm.
and that if we weren't able to unearth anything paranormal, they'd probably have to make it up. And we weren't crazy about that because we don't want to make up anything. We know that there's stuff that does happen. So what we did in our sizzle reel was we went back to a location that we've been to several times that we knew was very active, and we recreated what we had happened to us on a prior incident. But then other stuff's happened anyway. So
Mhm.
we were good to go. It wasn't like, because we did not feel comfortable with lying to the public. Like, we want you to know that this is a reality, that this happens. But it also doesn't happen as quickly and as much as they say. I mean, you can go to an investigation and you can be there for 6 hours and have nothing happen. You might have to go back to a location 2-3 times before something happens.
Wow.
Then you can be so lucky, like we were in the mines, and have tons of things happen. Well, it's just very unpredictable. And I look at it very differently than these programs are. They kind of just want to show you the ghosts and show you that this happens, but I'm all about helping the spirit and helping the people who are being affected by the spirit, and also all of us mentoring each other. So you just mentioned, how do you debunk something? Well, we always try to debunk something and get another answer to it, and if we can't, then we know something's going on. But a lot of the time, when we're all together, there's usually 6, 7 of us together at
Mhm.
one time. We're all sensitive to a certain degree. And as I mentioned, I'm not nearly as talented as some of the people on my team. They can see, hear, and speak right off because they've been experiencing this for 40 years and nurturing it since they were kids. And so when we're all together, this positive energy that you have, everyone has a piece of the puzzle that fits together.
Mhm.
And somehow we end up getting to the root of a situation. But when you say debunk, if you're in a particular area and your equipment is going off, that's usually the thing that you want to debunk first. Is there an energy source other than a spirit? Is there an electrical source somewhere that might be activating? Is there a phone close by that might be causing it? You want to do that. But if you're standing there and your equipment's going off, and I get my poofy feeling where I feel like I'm drunk and I'm off balanced, if that's happening to me, and somebody else is saying, oh, I see something in the corner, and somebody else has got the camera going and saying, oh, I'm picking something up on the camera, it can't all be a debunk when it's all happening at the same time.
Correct. Correct.
You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Because I'm feeling something, somebody else is feeling something, something's coming up on the camera, and all the equipment's going crazy. Then you know you got something. So if you go back and you look at your photographs, or you go back and you look at the footage on your camera, and you picked up on something, and you know that that was at the same time that everybody was feeling weird or getting something, then you know that it was definitely something, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. It does. In your research and your, doing what you do, have you ever come across like helped solve a case or something like that?
I wish. I really do wish. I mean, we've had situations where we've been able to get a name and connect it to a location. And that was really cool that you got a name and you actually found out that that person actually
Mhm.
lived in that location at one point. That's very cool. See, the thing of it is I'm writing these stories for my books.
Mhm.
So when we go on an investigation, it's ultimately going to end up being a chapter in one of my books. When we go to a location, 90% of the time, I've already spoken to the business owner or the homeowner because I've reached out to them or they reached out to me, and we're sharing stories. So I already know 90% of the time what's going on in the location before we go to it. But I never disclose that information to the members of my team. They don't want to know, and I don't want them to know because we want to be able to corroborate everything afterwards. So if they start seeing and experiencing things that I already know about, I can say, I already knew that. You
Mhm.
didn't, but it's happening. So it's kind of like it's a win-win for me because I it's more affirmation. Oh my goodness, I already knew that and you didn't, and it's happening. That kind of thing.
Mhm.
And it's great when you get a name and then you find out after that the person whose name that you got was actually a former resident. One time we did an investigation in a home that was formerly a tavern, and we found out the gentleman's last name was Hoyt, and the house that they lived in was Hoyt's Tavern back in the 1800s. And then we ended up going down to the cemetery that same night and found his grave, which was really, really cool. And that kind of happens every now and again when we're at a location. Somebody will come through and we'll get a name, and we'll, the power of modern technology now, you could
Mhm.
just get your phone out and Google a name, and then we'll find out, oh my goodness, Joe Schmo really lived here. He was here.
Wow.
Go look. And then we can go to the cemetery and actually find his grave. So I like when that happens, but no, I've never actually helped in a particular case. We had a situation here last year or the year before where a young man disappeared. The closest I ever came to it was taking a walk with my daughter in a vicinity where and it just happened. We saw police there, and it came into my head, geez, I wonder if it's that young man that they found. Don't ask me why I thought that, but it just came into my head. I wonder if they found that young man's body. And there would be no reason for me to really think about that, Dio. It was just, we were on this trail walking and we saw the police, and it just popped into my head. And ironically enough, that afternoon, one of the people on my team at the time messages me and she goes, they found that kid's body and it was located
Wow.
over by blah, blah. And I was like, oh my gosh. I just said to my daughter when we were walking, I wonder if they found that kid's body. And that's what it was. And he wasn't even near that location, to be honest with you. He was somewhere
Wow.
totally different. So that's what made it even worse. So that's the closest I ever came to doing something like that, which was kind of cool because if that's something that I can learn more about, I would love to be able to help that way. And then I had another incident where I wrote a story in my last book called Warren County Hauntings and Other Strange Phenomena. It's about this young girl. They call her Princess Doe. She was found deceased in a cemetery, and they were not able to find out her identity, and the town ended up burying her right at that location, and they put a beautiful memorial up for her. This was a 40-year-old case that
Wow.
had been unsolved. And the only thing that I did in that instance was I wrote about it in my book because I wanted to bring exposure to the story. But this last July, that cold case was solved by the police using
Wow.
genetic DNA. They were able to find out exactly who she was, and were able to give her family in Long Island closure that she was deceased and that she had been found back in the 80s. And they were able to arrest the man who killed her finally,
Wow.
found out who he was, which was amazing. And so what I did is I updated that in my book so that the readers could know that even though her ghost was haunting the cemetery and this is what happened, she can now rest in peace because they finally identified her and caught her killer. So those were kind of the closest I've come to helping in any kind of cases, if I helped at all. But it
Uh,
was very interesting story
I mean, but
nonetheless, you know.
it's most than what people actually do. At least this is something you're very passionate about, very honest about, and you have there's no gains, right? Your only gains is that
No,
it's closure, right? And
yes.
and that's most than what a lot of people do. A lot of people will sit there and just mind their business, or would even have will throw their hands up. That's at least it's not me.
Or they'll video it and show it on TikTok,
Yeah, I'd
what's
be like,
going
oh,
on,
look at
and
that.
not
Yeah.
do anything about helping whatever's going on. That really ticks me off when that happens.
Yeah.
When people are video. So why aren't you helping that person, or why aren't you helping that animal? Why are you just watching it unfold and not doing anything about it so you can get your views on your channel? It really stinks
Yeah.
when people do that.
Yeah. And the reason I asked is because like Netflix just released Jeffrey Dahmer
Oh
series,
yeah, I heard about that.
and it
Yeah,
really it's really like fucked up my head a little bit because it's
that's
hard.
really
It's
crazy.
it's horrible, and like there's individuals like yourself that dedicate their life trying to help these spirits, and like I could just imagine how many spirits like those are lost. It's very
Yeah.
unfortunate,
Did
that
you
that whole
watch the
event.
program? Did you
I
get a
did.
chance to watch it?
I did.
So did they show, because I haven't seen it yet, did they show the part where one of the young men victims was able to escape the apartment and run to try and get help? And Jeffrey said, "Oh, it's just my boyfriend, and we had an argument," and they released him back into his
The
custody.
the
Did they do,
14-year-old boy.
can you imagine? When I hear that, this guy got out and away, and they gave him back to this crazed lunatic. Just kills me. It just kills me. And
He was
all of those.
he was the little brother of one of the victims that occurred previous to that.
Oh,
So he
wow.
was living with he first started living with his grandmother. And he brought a boy home and he escaped. His younger brother one day was at the liquor store, apparently in the show, right? And he brought him back to the house because he said that he's paying money and his family's struggling. So it's
I
unfortunate.
can't imagine. I just can't believe that people lived in that apartment
Mm-hmm.
and didn't suspect any. I mean, I think I would have been common sense. Something's
Yeah.
amiss. Something's going on. Like I could not stand by and not get to the root of the problem.
But
I
you know what it
just
is? There was throughout the show, there's this one, the neighbor, his neighbor at the time that was actually doing stuff and getting people, but because it's the ghetto, it's the hood, it's
mm,
poverty. Not nobody, especially in that time, which is I think it's around like where like the Jesse Jackson riots and all this was going on. Um, Nobody really cared, honestly.
mm.
So that's why, like, when the cops saw the kid and said, "Oh, that's your boyfriend," they I don't know the correct term to it, but they were against gay people.
Mm,
So like in the scene, the guy says we're gonna give him back, and I gotta go take a shower because this is disgusting.
wow.
Like they literally
Wow.
set that up in the scene, and it's just it grinds. I grind my teeth
I,
how
I,
it,
I can't even. Yeah.
it's just very unfortunate that we had to live in that time. And this I'm not gonna disclose too much of it, but this a point is one of the victims that is gonna break your heart.
Really.
Yeah, because he actually liked the guy.
Oh,
He actually liked him generally.
wow.
And it's it's just I don't it's they do these shows, and it's like I'm not sure they're just always trying to make a profit out of them,
Hmm.
or really just trying to unmask what we are as people sometimes.
And I wonder if it's going to change, though. I wonder if it's going to change people. I don't know. I would, my daughter and I were just talking something. I know it's a different theme, but
Yeah,
we
it's
were
okay, don't worry.
watching television yesterday and this commercial came on about saving elephants. And I'm an elephant person. I have elephant tattoos, elephants on my thing. I love elephants. I love
Nice.
all animals, but you already know. But
Yes.
I have a special attachment to elephants. And this commercial is really, really powerful. I mean, you watch these beautiful, majestic animals, and then you see them with their babies, and then they show you how they're killed, and then they show you the ivory bracelets that people use, and how those babies are left to die because their mothers have been taken from them just for their ivory. And it kills me. And I've spoken to people in the past who have said, I don't want to watch that. If you're going to put stuff like that on your Facebook, I'm not going to be your friend. Well, then don't be my friend because you know what? You need to watch something like this. You need to be aware of stuff like this so that we can make changes that things like this don't happen anymore. I can't imagine a world without elephants. And that's what it's coming to. We're having a world of suffering of animals and children because people just don't care and don't want to do anything about it. And it's disgusting. So, you know, as much as I didn't want to watch that commercial, I need to watch it because I need to be reminded that this does happen and that there are people out there that do these things and we need to stop it.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Yes. And just not just elephants, any other animal, people.
Absolutely.
It just
Yep.
one thing can open the doors to so many things.
Absolutely.
And I mean,
Absolutely.
it's it's just very unfortunate. Uh, because I don't know, like me, like I'm still 30s, and I'm not sure if it's once you become a parent, you start seeing things differently, right? But the way things are going now is just I said this a bunch, but it's becoming very unfortunate.
My two daughters say to me, Mom, I don't know if I want to have kids. And I can't, I mean, I would love to be a grandma,
Yeah,
but I can totally understand why they wouldn't want to have kids because it's a really scary world that we're
yeah.
growing up in.
You
Really
know,
scary world.
I resonate a lot with the young boy who told the story of how they ostracized him from society, and
Mm-hmm.
I have an autistic son. He's
Mm-hmm.
nonverbal. Every day is a challenge, and I've gone out with him, hang out, and I see how people, look at it.
React.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Even
Mm-hmm.
even family members. This is why I've become disattached uh
Mm.
with him. His little cousins as well. They don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I
And that's a learned experience too,
mhm,
because children, I work in kindergarten.
yeah,
Children don't. they don't differentiate no matter
Mhm.
what.
Mhm.
In fact, most of the time, children will embrace that autistic child and try and befriend them and make them feel like a part. It's the adults who
Yes.
influence,
Yes.
it's the
Yes.
adults who make them react. That's a learned experience. And it's really sad because if you just allow those children to be children, you would learn a lot. You really would.
Yes. Yes, 100%. You know, I was last week, literally, I went to take my son to his primary doctor's, which is a building specialized for children with needs.
Hmm.
And one of the customer service representative started talking to a security guard, and my son was having a meltdown. And my wife took him to the restroom to try to calm him down, play with the water, and but
Hmm.
they didn't know that I was there. So I literally heard how they were criticizing my son.
Really.
And these are supposed to be professional people that work
Hmm.
in this environment created for them.
Did you say anything?
I sure did said something.
Good, good, because I would too. Good for you. Good for you. I would have said something too because I can't stand back and let that go without having something said.
So, you know, I resonate so much with that little boy and your story. And, you
Mm,
know, it took a lot not for me to tear up, but it was, you know, it's amazing what you're doing because, you know, I grew up in Puerto Rico, right? I grew up in small town, not a lot of hope. And I grew up with a lot of these exactly what you described of spirits, a lot. And, you
mm,
know, I nobody would explain it to me. Like I grew up
mm-hmm.
for a very, I think I want to say until like I was like 13, maybe 14. Like every time I went to sleep, I felt somebody coming over to me and laying right next to me.
Okay, so you're sensitive to spirit then too.
Yes,
Yeah.
and you know the chills, that coldness, uh, somebody you know feeling somebody's like caressing you in a type of way.
Uh-huh.
So for me, like when I hear people talking about it, they you know quickly get frightened, scary, you know, some Halloween stuff going on, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I stay quiet because for me, I feel like it was normal. There was nobody there who educated me, and you know, I never felt in danger. I just, you know, like honestly, I was struck my shoulders like, "What's up, man?" And keep it moving and keep it moving. You know, because I grew up with my grandparents, so I grew up with certain values and a lot of within the community were older. You know, like if somebody passes away, we can't play music for a week due to respect and all
Mm-hmm.
that, right? And so you know, I I get 100. I can empathize and understand what you go through on these in these
Mm-hmm.
situations, which is it's amazing because it's not with you know the media will tell you like oh we're gonna hunt this ghost and they're basically trying to irritate them and get her and there's proof and they're
I
evil.
hate that. I hate that. I hate that. That really is upsetting when that happens.
Yes.
When they antagonize spirit, it just really rubs me the wrong way. There's no reason for it. I mean, I'm not going to say that there aren't angry and mean spirits out there because there are. I mean, if they were not nice in life, they're not nice in death. That's just the way it is. But you do get spirits that are very frustrated because they're trying to get you to recognize them. They're trying to get your attention. And if you're not listening or you're not able to hear or see, that's going to frustrate them. So they're going to do things to try and get your attention, knock things over, move things around. I mean, you are going to have mischievous little ghosts
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
too every now and then, but for the most part, they're trying to get your attention, and that I'm sure frustration comes with it if they are not able to succeed in what they're trying to do.
Yes. Are they like do you know or is there any like type of uh like differential from different spirits? Like, is there, oh, this must be a mischievous spirit. Oh, this must be, you know, like type of spirits, or just it's depending on the just the person.
Not the way, not the one I'm aware of. It's just the person's personality. I mean, we've had children that are mischievous because they're trying to be playful and because they're kids. And then you've had grumpy old men that didn't want you in their place. And they were mean and grumpy because they were mean and grumpy in life. I mean, fortunately, I haven't had the experience of dealing with anything really nasty. I mean, I've had mean, angry, but not really nasty stuff. And usually, if something mean is there, it would be taken care of by somebody who is in my group that's been doing this for like 40 or so years. The one time we had an occasion where we had what is called an elemental, which was really strange. We were in a home and there was a spirit there that we were trying to communicate with, and this elemental thing came in that wouldn't let the spirit communicate with us. And when I say elemental, because I'm really still just learning about these elementals myself, but it gave the appearance of it was a young boy, but you could tell it was not a young boy, and you can tell that it was never human, and that's what they call elemental.
Wow.
Where is it? I have no clue. It's the first time they've ever dealt like that before. And so now the more I learn about paranormal, the more I'm understanding that there are levels and dimensions and a lot more out there that we don't even know about, that we're not aware of or understand. So, and I'm in my very early learning stages of figuring out all this stuff. It started so late. But as long as I know that I'm in the right direction and that I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, then I'm okay. I mean, I don't have to know everything. Do I like to listen and learn? Yeah. Do I want to educate myself? I'm a sponge when it comes to that kind of stuff, but I don't have to know everything. I just want to make sure I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
Got it. Got it. Talk to me a little bit about your podcast. What can they find? What are some things you guys talk about there?
Well, I have two. The very first one that just had its 1 year anniversary is
All
called
right,
Eleanor
congrats.
Wagner's Strange and Thank you. Eleanor Wagner's Strange and Scary World, which is out of the Paranormal UK radio network. And I've brought guests on the show that I've written about in my books before. I've brought on people that just want to talk about strange and scary. We've talked about ghosts and near-death experiences, true accounts, reincarnation, psychic, you know, all sorts of scary things are what I usually have as themes and topics on that show. And then this past April, I started Eleanor Wagner's Creepin' It Real, which is out of the Coast to Coast Entertainment Network, streamed right through my Eleanor Wagner YouTube channel. And that one, I have conversations with paranormal groups from around the world and around the country. And they come on the show and bring evidence with them that they've unearthed on investigations in places that they've investigated. And so we'll have the location and a little history background, and then they'll talk about what happened when they were on their investigations. And then if they have audio or video footage or photographic evidence, we'll present that on the podcast because it does come through as a video as well. So people can listen, but they can actually view it too and see the
Nice.
evidence that we share
Very
with the
cool.
public.
Very cool. Have you ever got approached I'm sorry to ask you this question, but it's like, have you ever got an approach
Yeah.
to like just a random person approach you and be like, yeah, you don't want to go through that rabbit hole?
No, no. I think everybody is pretty much very supportive. If anything, you get people that are doubtful, that don't believe, that try and dismiss you kind of thing.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and those people, I don't really have time for those people because you have your thing, you can do your own thing. I'm still going to do what I want to do. If you don't believe me, that's fine. You don't have to. I really don't care. So you do have people that try and it's okay to be a skeptic. I'm fine with that, but people who just immediately
Yeah.
dismiss you, I have no
I
time. I
can
have no
I
time for them.
yeah, I can imagine you so from time to time you'll find some a-hole because like I said,
Oh
I was
yeah.
talking to like Daniel Jackson and he said himself like there's a-holes out there.
Absolutely. And believe it or not, there's soap opera drama in the paranormal world too. You find it in regular life, it's in the paranormal world too. I'm happy, like right now we have this really core group that I have together, and we all really gel and mesh very well.
Yeah.
And there hasn't been any drama recently, so knock on wood, because it could be like high school, and I'm in my 50s already. I don't want to do high school shit no more. It's
Yeah,
like,
I get it.
no
Yeah,
way.
yeah, yeah. 100%.
So we're a bunch of old people that just want to hang and help ghosts. That's what we're doing.
Well, I like the fact that you guys do it like in small towns. I feel like small towns have the most potential for everything.
And you know what? They're not investigated to the core. Like, these are
Yeah.
places that nobody. I had one reader once say to me, well, I don't know any of these places. And I'm thinking, well, why do you want to know them? Don't you want to learn about someplace new? Why do you want to hear about all the old hat
Yeah.
stuff that's been around? Let's talk about something that you haven't heard about yet. Somebody's house that's from the 1800s that's active. And I find that those are the places that we have more things
Hmm.
happen at than places that you would go to that are constantly investigated by different groups over and over and over again. I just feel like the unknown ones that are new that are coming out are far more interesting, I think. And
Yeah.
everybody likes a good ghost story. I can't say enough about that.
From since the moment you started, right, to present time,
Hmm.
is there any favorite story or encounter you've actually encountered that's like this is the one has topped it all, or just they're all just
They
special?
they're all special. They really are. I mean, every single one of them has something to it that's very special to my heart. But that very first one that I did with the group, when the Lady Ghostbusters team was established at the Ogdensburg mines, that one sits probably higher up on the pedestal because it was the very first one. And we got such great evidence, and we were featured on TV with
Nice, nice.
uh, that particular evidence that we unearthed. And a lot of stuff happened, and it really happened. It really happened. And I was there. I can attest to it. So that probably sits the highest on the list for
Yeah.
me. But every single investigation we do warrants something that I leave with that affects me in a certain way
I
that I
think
don't
I
forget
think
it.
just I think just able to actually experience it, right? The moment, and you continue to
Yeah.
experience those moments as you continue to investigate and learn new things and find new things. It's that right there. It's the icing on the cake.
Hmm. It's great when you're actually getting a response. And then when you get that response and you hear it on your recorder,
Yeah.
and you're like, did that person just say no? Did you just hear no? Or did you hear that? And then we have to play it over because we don't even trust what we've heard. And then we hear it again. Oh my God, it really did responded. That it's a male spirit and he really did respond. And that's cool when that happens because we didn't make it up. It wasn't one of us. And when that happens, and it does happen a lot, it's really a lot of fun. It's cool
Nice.
because you realize that you've
Yeah.
actually communicated.
Is there any like scenario that you encounter like there's a person with an animal, like a companion or something like that?
Yeah, we had an investigation in a private residence, and we connected with the elderly grandfather and his deceased dog. And do you
Wow.
have animals? Do you have animals yourself?
No,
Okay,
no.
so I have three dogs, and each one of my dogs has a distinctive voice, a distinctive bark. So I will recognize them if they're around the corner of my house and I hear a bark, and I'll know which dog it is. So you can recognize your dog just like you can recognize your family members, their
Yes, correct.
voices.
Yeah.
So when we got this gentleman on audio, his voice and the dog bark, the family was just astounded. They started crying. They were just like, oh my God, that's him. And that's his dog. I don't remember what the dog's name was. That was Barky. You know, that's his bark. I know that's him. And it was really wild because they were hoping that he was the one, well, at least one of the spirits that were around them in their home. Turned out it was. It's something on our EVP, and his dog barked too. So that they were together
Wow, that's
in their
awesome.
life.
That's
There's a distinct
beautiful.
difference. There's a distinct difference, Dio, between a ghost that's on this plane and not moving on, and a deceased loved one. Deceased loved ones, those are spiritual visits from them. They come and go. They're up in heaven, and they can come back and forth anytime that they want, which is really
Really?
neat. So when you feel like you have a presence of one of your loved ones, you don't think they're stuck, because they're not. They're coming to visit you, and they're sending us signs all the time to let us know that they're there and they're okay. And that's kind of what I also use when I'm talking to a spirit. I say to them, if you go into the light, you can come back here anytime you want to. But if you don't go into the light, you're stuck here. And a lot of the time that helps them to move on, but sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes they don't want to move on. But those spiritual visits from loved ones are really wonderful. And they were hoping that their grandpa was with them. They had a feeling it was him. And when we got him on the audio, it was just amazing. And so, yeah, we do have people with their pets.
That's awesome. That's that's awesome. That's just awesome. That's beautiful. So
I've
everything
had a
comes
lot of
from.
animals over the years, and I'm hoping that when I go to the gates someday, all of them will come running over to me. That's what I'm hoping, that when I go, they're all going to be waiting there for me.
That's beautiful. Does how does your family support you in this?
They're really, really good about it. I mean, both my daughters are sensitive to a degree. My older one is more receptive to learning about it. My younger one's a little fearful. She's come on a couple of investigations with me, and she's had her jacket pulled and her hair pulled, and she's like, no, 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 no. So she's resistant, while the older one is receptive to learning, and they're both very supportive and helpful to me in everything that I do. My husband, I call him my believer disbeliever, because he believes, but he doesn't want to admit it. But
Yeah.
he's very, very supportive of what I do. So I'm blessed that they let me go on my little ghost hunts and do my thing.
Has he has you read your books? Have you had the conversation about stories, and like what's his feedback? Does he stay
he's
astonished, but like okay, like but yet still like
he's not a reader, but we have talked about the stories in the book. We've talked about instances, because my dad's come to me, my mom's come to me, he's come to me, and his thing is like, well, why does my mother come to me? And I'm like, because you don't like to listen, you don't believe, but you want her to come to you. See what I mean? Like, he's a believer disbeliever. If she came to him, then he'd believe,
yeah.
kind of thing. So he's kind of like on that cusp there. He believes, but he doesn't want to admit it. And he's come on a couple investigations, but it's not his thing. But
Yeah.
he's fine with me doing it. So that's the main thing.
But it's probably scared and just doesn't want to show it.
Probably. I remember the first time I told him my dad came to our house, and it was when I was holding my daughter, and I was rocking her like a mommy and me moment with the lights dimmed, and we were just having that special moment. And my dad came. And at first I thought the house was on fire. I didn't realize that this smoky mist was my dad until I realized it.
Wow.
I thought the house was on fire. And I get up, and I'm like, oh my God, it's not. It was my dad. It was the strangest thing that happened. And then I went down and I told my husband, and my husband's like, do you think maybe we should call the priest in tomorrow to come in and bless the house? I'm like, are
Wow.
you kidding me? You exercised my dad. That was my dad, I was like, you kidding me? So that's what I mean. The believer, disbeliever. He'll bring in a priest to bless the house because he felt like a spirit was there, and it was my dad. So
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Eleanor, it's been an honor talking to you. I had a blast. Before we go,
I did too.
yeah, it's an honor. It was an amazing conversation. I enjoyed every minute of it. Before we go, please let the people know where they can find you.
They can find me at authoreleanorwagner.com. AuthorEleanor.com. Everything is there. They can go right to the website, and they can find the galleries to look at all the photos and the videos and the connections to my books and the podcasts. It's all right there.
Boom. Go check her out. Go find her. Go support her. Go buy her book. Go check her out on her podcast. Eleanor, once again, thank you for joining me. It's been an honor. I had a blast. And
Thank you.
keep helping these lost spirits. They need the help. At least you're doing something, and that makes me happy.
Will do.
Have a good
Thank you.
night.
Me too.